Hey there, and welcome to the Mugcast, a cozy listen to pair with your coffee. I'm Hannah, the writer behind Huggin' a Mug on Medium, where I cover everything from music and travel to psychology and female Gen Z life. Each week, I read one of my articles aloud with a few fresh reflections and insights along the way. So grab your mug, settle in, and let's get into today's piece. Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited if you're listening again. I have something very interesting to bring to you today, which is an article called The Psychology of Taylor Swift. I became an intern Swiftie and took notes on what drives the thoughts of an icon. Basically, I wrote this article a week ago now, almost a week ago. I'm not one of those people who really engage in the Taylor Swift world, in the Taylor Swift universe, but I feel like she's just a person who's changed so much for the music industry, for women speaking up for themselves. She's such a powerhouse. I really feel that I should be talking about her because she really is an inspiration and she really is a true role model to me as well. And I like to look into role models and how they maneuver through daily challenges, how they navigate their lives. Today we're going to be talking about Taylor Swift, which is so fitting. Initially, I wasn't going to pick this article, but then the craziness about Taylor Swift's podcast appearance happened, where Taylor Swift appeared on the New Heights podcast, which is hosted by her boyfriend, Travis Kelce, and his brother. I'm so hyped about it right now because just about half an hour ago, I finished watching it, and this was probably one of the best podcast episodes I've ever watched. Again, I'm not a Swiftie, but I was so hyped for the whole thing, and it was so beautiful seeing a woman who was so genuinely happy and so clever and so advocative of her own work. She really spoke up for owning her records. She talked about the whole experience about the Eras tour, and of course she talked a lot about her new album, The Life of a Showgirl, which I'm so excited for this album. And I was watching just Taylor being cute with her boyfriend as well. It took me 2 hours and 30 minutes to watch the whole thing because I was taking notes. And here's maybe where I get into a little bit of a therapist behavior, but sometimes when I have something that I really like and that I feel like I might want to write about later, I sit there with my phone and I take notes. But yeah, as for this article, I'm really excited to be reviewing this because I think Taylor is a marvelous artist. I admire her songwriting skills. I admire her leadership abilities. I really think she's just this leader of her whole Taylor Swift empire. And she talked in the podcast as well about how she's kind of like a world builder. She leaves all these Easter eggs for her fans to find. And I'm not a Swiftie. I'm not like observing her all the time, and I don't find these Easter eggs because of that. But I totally understand where she's coming from, and she's got such a unique artistic approach to what she's doing. So I really admire her for the work that she's doing for the art of music, but also as a woman, speaking up for other women and speaking up for other artists as well. So I'm very excited to jump into this podcast episode and read to you my article, The Psychology of Taylor Swift. Let's get into it. The Psychology of Taylor Swift. I became an intern Swiftie and took notes on what drives the thoughts of an icon. Anywhere adjacent to Taylor Swift's multi-billion-dollar empire is not a safe space for criticism. That is a result of her Swifties who guard their leader like an army, online and in real life. Yet, I decided that after long contemplation, I would dip my toes into this pond full of crocodiles. I come with both my arms raised above my head and wearing a white shirt of defeat, because I am, again, not a Swiftie. I know, breathe, girl. I don't mean you any harm. I'm coming into this as somebody who's just interested in music, and who admires women who speak up for themselves, which Taylor Swift very much is a woman to speak up for other females. So I didn't do this until now because I was so afraid of misstepping. So I enrolled myself in a Swiftie boot camp so as to avoid any misinformation. I was interested in writing about something that I, as a therapist and psychology nerd, had found peculiar from just watching from a distance: the psychology of Taylor Swift. The idea came about after watching Zoe Unlimited, a YouTuber with a degree in marketing, analyze Taylor's marketing strategy. As many women so often do, probably the biggest pitfall of womanhood actually, she found many points of criticism and exploitation in her career. Yet I couldn't help but think to myself that all of these marketing strategies were maybe intended by Taylor's marketing team, but she herself seems to be incredibly relatable. I can just add to that after having listened to her talk for 2 hours. She's incredibly relatable and such a friendly person. That bugged me since the main discourse around Taylor at this point is how unrelatable she has become in her 8 mega villas. Though I'm not a Swiftie, I made a shocking discovery. Taylor Swift is also just human. A human with feelings, with automatic thoughts, with trauma, and all the problems women battle in our world. As a feminist and Gen Z interested in gender roles and social expectations in our globalized society, I was intrigued. But she's also a billionaire and a singer, an incredible artist and songwriter, and she directs her own videos as well. So how did she get there? What psychological mechanisms underlie the magical wonder of Taylor Swift that all of us have but are missing out on reaping the benefits of? Here is a deep dive into Taylor Swift's psychology by analyzing her public presence. A deceiving woman by nature. One of the first things I stumbled upon in my research was a highly clicked reel saying, "Is Taylor Swift using psychology to trick us?" This was a statement made during an interview where a specialist was asked to educate the viewer on subtle body language cues. The example she was providing in the snippet was the following movement. You should hover your flat hand just in front of your mouth while opening the mouth slightly. This gesture, she explained, was supposedly frequently used by Taylor Swift when walking into a concert and thanking her fans for their attendance. The body language expert explained that this move was a generally positive received humbleness cue. At the end of the video, she did not miss the opportunity to state that it was ironic that Taylor was using this when entering the stage of yet another concert hall with hundreds, if not thousands, of tickets sold. She said that this movement made Taylor seem cute and humble when really there was nothing humble about it. Having watched Taylor and Kelce together, I mean, of course you can do a lot of editing and whatnot, but I'm trying to judge based on the feelings that I got and what I saw, because I really don't like to be the person who's like interpreting malicious intents into every person. I know you might call me naive for that, but I really like to see people in their best light first. All I saw in those 2 hours was two people being really cute and loving to one another, Taylor glowing with pride and happiness and just being so generally kind. The most beautiful moment of the podcast for me was when she was talking about how he had won a game, and then she went onto the field and she was so grateful for seeing the happiness in his eyes. It's so beautiful how she described this experience of seeing him win a game, seeing him succeed. Mind you, I'm a total feminist. Like, I don't mean this in a she should be the girly who cheers for her man. No, this man had been cheering for her for 2 hours straight in the podcast, and I'm sure he cheers for her every single show that he sees. So they were just giving each other so much appreciation, and this moment of her being so genuinely happy for him that she almost forgot her own perspective, like her position as an artist who fills stadiums with people as well, was so genuine to me. It was so humble to me. This was really a person who found such pride and happiness in another person's success. That's the main reason that I don't agree with this person talking about Taylor using psychology or Taylor using a humbleness cue. I don't think that's it. I think she's just a humble person. That moment with her appreciating Travis's win was really a person who just wanted the best for the people she loves. And that's genuine. And that's very kind and caring. It's a person who can show love and care appreciation for others while not neglecting her own wins. You know, both things can exist at the same time. And if you haven't watched that podcast, which I would guess you have, because there's literally 12 million people who watched this podcast within the first 20 hours that it went live. I watched it and I was like, wait, there's been more people watching this than the whole population of my home country. I would highly recommend you watch it because it's such a beautiful interaction between a woman who just knows her standpoint, who knows her shit, who's got her things together, who's proud of herself, who takes the appreciation, sometimes in a funny way, that she gets from her boyfriend, and then she yet has the humbleness and the ability to show the same happiness and gratitude and satisfaction and love, basically, to her boyfriend. Now, I find this statement of the body language expert very pretentious. This lady might be a body language expert, but where does she get the knowledge from that Taylor does this on purpose? Especially if all of these gestures are oh so secret and subtle that this lady needs to teach them and make money from it. Even if she knew why Taylor was doing this movement, and even if she fully understood Taylor's feelings, why the hell are people so afraid of using psychology? She makes it sound like psychology is an evil trick or a marketing strategy. I think that this lady, and I'm sorry to be so direct, doesn't know shit about Taylor. At least not more than the rest of us. Much more likely she's doing what Dr. Romani, a psychologist online, suggested people frequently do when they view icons and stars. I will label this the sparkly mirror effect, because Romani doesn't give it a name and I wish I'd found one online. When a person rises to superstardom like Taylor, they become ink blots that we reflect our lives onto. When others talk about her, they don't talk about the star Taylor Swift, they talk about themselves, because ultimately, none of us really know her. Besides Travis Kelce, apparently. So the case for the body language expert above might just be that she, knowing and maybe even using the cues she's teaching and has discovered herself, is projecting the same knowledge onto Taylor Swift. She doesn't actually know if Taylor knows the hand gestures, but she assumes she does because in her mind, it is completely natural to know such things. But actually, for the most of us, this is far from common knowledge. Especially with public figures, we love to overanalyze. Every outfit that Taylor wears gets picked apart. Her relationships are the talk of the town, and people go digging into her lyrics to find reflections of her past loves. This is a double-sided thing because on the one hand, she knows that people will be diving into her lyrics to find things. On the other hand, that's also where she hides her Easter eggs. So I find it funny how she plays with the fact that people are over-interrogating her. And I'm putting this as the first part in this article for a reason. I want the reader or listener in this analysis to be aware of their own mental presets and to watch themselves think. This is a job that therapists usually do for you, but to me, it is truly fascinating. Almost like undigging the weathered skeleton of a long dead dinosaur, the Swiftosaurus. The Swiftie problem. Another reason I started off with the sparkly mirror effect is that I think this is one of the main underlying factors for the borderline craziness of some of her fans. I'm not calling you more crazy than I am at this point, by the way. I'm fully aware I'm a crazy, insane person, and I mean this craziness in the most loving way, and you will see why. The Swifties are all fun and games at first, but they can become quite dangerously obsessed at times, almost like a cult. And that's why sometimes it feels hard to understand Taylor Swift because it feels like there's this whole world. And even when I intern Swiftied a little bit, when I started watching stuff, I felt like I literally had to learn all this stuff, and that's making it a little bit culty or just very hard to get into. I don't want to point fingers here. Everyone has their hobbies and obsessions, and so I would say to each their own. However, the media is pouring out articles about the dangerous parasocial relationship that their icon has with the Swiftie minions. Now, the first thing to understand here, if we are to approach the problem through a scientific lens, which I'm attempting, is what even are parasocial relationships? We know what relationships are. So here is how the Cambridge Dictionary defines the term parasocial. Parasocial is involving or relating to a connection between a person and someone they don't know personally. For example, a famous person or a character in a book. So basically, it's a one-sided fling. In simple terms, with all the implications that a one-sided relationship has on us humans, positive and negative. Parasocial interactions, PSI in short, are the audience's interactions with public personas via any media, as if they were engaged in a reciprocal relationship with them. It becomes a parasocial relationship after repeated exposure to the media persona, causing an illusion of intimacy and friendship. Parasocial relationships are enhanced due to trust and self-disclosure provided by the media persona. At the same time, the icon has a significant amount of influence on her followers, informing the way that they perceive certain topics or even their purchasing habits. This is exactly where the criticism is coming from. An interesting fact raised in research is that parasocial relationships might be favored by those with anxious or avoidant attachment styles. Anxiously attached people like the reliable presence of their star online. Avoidantly attached ones are at ease because they can click away. Furthermore, the idea of homophily, i.e., the tendency for friendships to form between people who are alike, plays into relationships with public figures because people see themselves mirrored in their idol naturally, as we mentioned in the sparkly mirror effect. Thus, these faraway beings might become something of an imaginary friend to their fans. A study on fans of My Little Pony, a horse series with a friend group of main characters, shout out if you watched that because I did, found that fans of different characters exhibited distinct psychological profiles that often mirrored their chosen characters' personality traits, with characters serving various parasocial functions from aspirational role model to source of emotional support. I have had many parasocial relationships where I viewed some sort of famous person as an aspirational role model. And I think that's so legit because you need somebody to look up to have a goal. Like that's part of having a goal to me, is to find somebody who's already doing it and then to kind of start reverse engineering how they got there. Role models are not a bad thing. In psychological terms, this is not a pathology, but rather a normal social cognition. It is more of a self-soothing mechanism or a natural tendency of humans, just like children who have a whole stage in growing up that is dedicated to creating imaginary friends. If you ever watched kids grow up, or if you've ever been around kids who had imaginary friends, I'm just letting you know that's completely normal. That's part of growing up. That's actually kind of important for them to have an imaginary friend because it shows that they're developing very intricate cognitive patterns. So props to them. So no worries. You don't need to rip the posters off your wall or burn all your records. You are not psychologically impaired for being a fan. However, if you're into deep and your icon is not a positive advocate, but rather exploitative, one might suffer from issues with body image, unrealistic life expectations, aggression, or even parasocial breakup, which hurts just as much as a real breakup. Any form of grieving in any sort of relationship evokes the same painful feelings. Taylor's problem is, at this point, that she's being criticized for her high ticket prices during the Eras Tour and the empire of merchandise she has built. Yet the environment around famous people is just simply competitive, with everyone trying their best to get a bigger share of the followers' limited attention. The Taylor empire is not a one-woman show. For the huge stadiums to fill and the albums to be created in high speed, she has to pay a horde of people, and from what I hear, she's a great employer. For instance, she paid $179 million to her employees of the Eras Tour as a bonus. Everyone from event planners to dancers and truck drivers was rewarded for their efforts. So she needs to milk her brand to pay those around her. And evidently, she's doing a good job at that because there surely would be many people who could complain about working for her to cause an uproar. Because to cause an uproar in Taylor Swift's empire means to make money. I don't think we can imagine how many people could be selling bad stories to the media in order to make Taylor Swift look bad, and these people would get paid for the bad information or the rumors that they're spreading. I'm sure there's like contracts and stuff, but again, I choose to believe in the good in people. That's why I'm interested in psychology. If I didn't believe in the good in people, I would probably be marketing or business or finance, which is why I'm not into a guy in finance, but that's on the side. And she's also a celebrity known for her close contact with her fans. The Swifties exist because she has been singing her songs of heartbreak for almost 2 decades by now, and thus mirrors the romantic endeavors of 2 generations of girls, millennials and Gen Z. She was also there for her fans during COVID by releasing a dual album, Folklore and Evermore. This is relevant because studies showed a boost in parasocial relationships during COVID-19 due to the lack of actual social interactions. I personally think that she is not doing all of this to mislead thousands of girls. As a woman who also started small and had to take several hits over time, I'm sure she knows the blade she's walking on when being so close to her fans despite the criticism. To be frank, I think Taylor is a great parasocial relationship to have. There are certainly worse people to look up to, like Kylie Jenner, but I try my very best not to speak badly about any women because I do think that's like the biggest problem we have in our current feminist movement. Like the biggest thing that we as women have to learn is to not badmouth each other because we're all in our own journeys and life's not easy for anyone. So let's just be a little more cool about it. That's literally something that I think women should learn from guys is like, come on, let's stop gossiping about people. Let's stop bad mouthing people. I'm not going to pretend that I've never gossiped, but I just think that I really don't want to talk badly about women unless they have seriously hurt me, which in that case, I will express the hurt that I'm feeling. The most powerful thing you can do if you want to have a negative impact on a famous person is to not watch them. Seriously, don't give them your time. That's how they make money. That's by you clicking on their videos, which is why I consciously don't click on any videos or posts or whatever that come from the Jenner clan thing, struggling to find nice words. I just don't think that they're female advocates in the way that I would like to see it. But yeah, to each their own. But therein also lies one of Taylor's main problems, which has kept and will probably keep biting her in the ass just as much as it does all of us. Because at the heart of it, every cookie baked with a fan, every candid lyric, every secret message for her Swifties, hidden in songs or lyric booklets, lies a fragile hope we're all seeking. Just like all of us, Taylor Swift might just want to be loved. And I can confirm after watching the podcast, I think she's feeling loved, and I love that for her. I'm so excited for her, actually. It's beautiful to see other women succeed, and it's even more beautiful to see other women be loved because they deserve it. All just expensive people pleasing. Now, here is another point where I demand caution because neither you nor I actually know Taylor Swift. But from the evidence I can gather online, I don't see a money-hungry exploiter running the optimal managing brand and marketing strategy. In my opinion, Taylor is walking a very narrow path between marketing strategy and the need to be loved with expert precision. And I applaud her for that. Famously, Taylor started out small. She lived the life of a normal girl with big dreams in Pennsylvania and later on in Tennessee, but was really always driven to achieve her goals, especially music. But the period of real normalcy was rather short, as she moved to Tennessee for her music career at the fragile age of 11. At 14, she signed a major record deal with Sony, making her the youngest signee in the history of the company. She had studied how to write songs and play the guitar for years at this point already, proving her ambition and goal-getter spirit. She really is a type A woman, truly type A. As a non-type A woman, I watched her and I was like, how? I'm so inspired and I'm so marveled by it, but like, how? My ADHD is way too big for me to be able to be that type A, but I absolutely admire it. You know, that's the reason her empire is working is because she's very type A. But we are going to get to that spiky part of her personality later. In terms of her personality, Taylor could be characterized as efficient, structured, and yet extroverted and agreeable in social interactions. I think it is evident from her social presence that Taylor thrives in interactions with her fans, going so far as to invite them to her house in her famous secret sessions to bake cookies with them and let them listen to her unreleased records. She seems to thrive on admiration while being able to directly translate this into action with her highly efficient nature. She truly has a very high work ethic, with her albums getting longer and longer, well, now a little bit shorter, but more perfect apparently, and her participation in the production process being one of the most engaged in the industry. She's known for writing all her songs on the album Speak Now entirely by herself after being criticized for not knowing how to write her own songs due to affiliations on her previous album. She takes pride in writing her own stories in her songs, and if there is one thing that makes her stand out as an artist, it is the ability to write songs that tell a story. Clearly, she takes her own life as a source, as a writer, and I can assure you that these kinds of deep narratives stem from feeling the same deep emotions yourself. A person who is not deeply emotional would not be able to portray them so vividly and accurately enough for millions of people to consider it relatable. So if there's one thing I would say Taylor might suffer from in a psychological perspective, it would be burnout. When I view her efforts in pleasing her team, her fans, and ultimately her family, who moved across the USA to make her dream come true, I can only see her as a massive people pleaser. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I am very much at risk of projecting myself onto her at this point, but I relate to her story of always wanting to prove herself to others. Her hard work and success are not the result of a massive marketing scheme to me, because if that had been the case, the beginning chapter of the story would have been written differently. The need to impress to satisfy the aspirations of others around her and to work efficiently towards being the best she can be feels to me like a very common practice in the human psyche. Trading success for love and compassion. It's a process labeled validation seeking on a therapist's anamnesis form. But the great thing about humans is that we are multifaceted, and if Taylor was just a simple people pleaser seeking validation, she surely wouldn't have so many sparkly platinum records on her walls. The Taylor switch the flip magic. The most appealing and easiest to grasp summary of Taylor's life is that from a blonde, cute country girl to a 1.6 billion brand empire. That sounds amazing, but it is an incredible oversimplification of the things that happened between 2004, when she signed her first record deal, and 2025, when she finished the Eras Tour. And at this point, guys, I'm trying to give everyone who's not a Swiftie a nice look into her background. But again, I'm putting out there, I haven't studied this. I don't study Taylor Swift because I'm not a Swiftie. I study psychology. If there's any Taylor Swift history facts that I misaligned, misinterpreted, or am putting the wrong way, please let me know. If you want to still keep things rather simple, the Kanye West incident in 2009 at the MTV Video Music Awards would be one of the turning points people often mention. But again, that's far too simple. Taylor has probably taken more hits than you can count, and many of them might never even see the light of day on a trashy magazine page. It started when, before she got her first record deal, Taylor decided not to sign with another label that offered to take her up and watch her develop her skills as a songwriter. This is supposedly some sort of a contract that is very common for new artists. They get a contract with a record label, and this label doesn't promise them to publish a record with them, but they promise to watch them to develop their skills. Taylor had at this point been knocking on many doors with many rejections, and then decided to reject this deal herself, as she thought she was ready to produce her first record and she didn't need to develop her songwriting anymore. And she was right. Soon after, she was discovered in a live gig in Nashville and signed an actual record deal. She also received harsh criticism after her performance at the 2010 Grammy Awards. In response, she wrote the song Mean, which became an instant success. After the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards, Taylor also released several songs subtly addressing Kanye West. This was followed by Kim Kardashian, the only woman alive I have no kernel of respect for as a woman or human, calling her a snake. Subsequently, Miss Swift countered this by making snakes a centerpiece of her branding and selling hundreds of snake rings as her merchandise at the time. She addressed these backlashes, which were in the early 2010s labeled Swift backlashes by the media. So hilarious. Nice pun. In her speech after being named as the Woman of the Decade by the Billboard Committee in 2019, she said, quote, "And now I realize that this is just what happens to a woman in music if she achieves success or power beyond people's comfort levels." As is evident in her Miss Americana documentary on Netflix, which I watched last year and was already mesmerized by, she has experienced many ups and downs and also gone through all the emotions in the process. She even took herself out of the spotlight for a whole year in an attempt to deal with negative comments. But the thing about Taylor is that she always comes back stronger. Every time she receives criticism, she would address it in her own way, be it by using it as a free advertisement, cheeky marketing campaigns, or inspiration for a new song. One might say she's acting out of spite, antagony, or even seek revenge. And while all of those might be true, I think she's mastered one thing in specific: female rage. She uses weapons pointed at her against others with cleverness and a cool that she certainly had to acquire through much pain. Thus, she has become an expert in reverse psychology when using a blow at her as a source for positive outcomes. She has proven stamina and a graceful level of patience in dealing with public dilemmas and keeping her own negative psychological reactance at bay, be it by secluding herself and taking a breath or marching forward with full strength. All of the points I raised above are also great examples of a strategy called strategic self anti-conformity, SSA, which is the act of being different on purpose to advocate for a behavior that is different from the one actually desired by your attacker. An easy example of this is the re-recordings that Taylor has done over the past years. As her old record label rejected her the rights to some of her old albums, they rejected her the master recordings of those albums, Taylor started re-recording her old songs in a slightly polished new version so as to own the rights to these new/old pieces. These albums were amazingly popular, even often outdoing the original. In May 2025, she finalized a payment of $360 million in order to buy back the rights to all of her music. This was not only a purposeful move to win her own music back, but it showed her as different from other artists who were still suffering from these conditions, conversely drawing attention to the issue of ownership in the music industry. This has not been the only time Taylor advocated for fellow artists. On November 3rd, 2014, she removed all of her music from Spotify temporarily as a protest against the unfair payment of artists on streaming platforms. Though the final word has hardly been uttered in this debate, her deliberate act of difference drew attention to the issue and moved the dialogue. Many successes in her life have been based on previous negative events, and her pointed and very accurate use of what I would call female rage is highly effective. A psychologist might call these actions strategic self anti-conformity. It started with statements on her exes through her songs in "You tell me I can't, so I will show you" fashion, and ended in advancements and attention for mistreatment in the whole of the music industry. She's so good at these things by now that the comments of Donald Trump on her are making me giggle in anticipation. If there's one human who can turn his idiocy into cashmere for our eardrums, it is certainly Taylor Swift. Part of why I'm so excited for this album right now is actually because I'm really hoping she has something in there that comments on Donald Trump. That would literally be the best to me. The alpha female of bridging art and mental health. People might have their own sort of opinions about Taylor, describing her as an evil marketing genius, a revenge-seeking lover, or a musician, lacking either singing, innovation, or any other criterion, caught in the smoke surrounding her persona. And it's insane the creativity that people are putting into designing negative headlines about her. Like, I think everything about her has been criticized, which means to me that not a lot of it can be valuable or truthful, because all negative doesn't exist. Things are never one-sided. But no one can deny her quick-witted abilities, whether they were there by nature or acquired through time. And yet she's always remained sensitive to the emotions and stories that drive her music, which is the centerpiece of her art. She proves her fine sense of self and awareness in the music video to "Look What You Made Me Do" on the Reputation album. It starts with a gravestone reading Taylor Swift's Reputation, under which a zombie Taylor claws its way out of her grave. The most interesting scene occurs at the very end, however, where all of Taylor's past selves or personas are aligned next to each other and are having a nagging conversation. The present day Taylor then proceeds to say, "I would very much like to be excluded from this narrative," leading to all of her other selves screaming, "Shut up." To her, it was a nudge towards her eras, but also towards the many personalities and roles she's played, and that is so cool to me. Not only is this a hilarious display of all the versions of Taylor we've seen through time, but it also represents her own awareness of the many personas she has accumulated within herself. To me, it is a very self-aware and applaudable, open display of the many facets of her personality. And that is one thing that makes Taylor such a great icon. She processes her emotions and mental health openly for everyone to see, making her more relatable and lovable. On a final note, I want to also shed some light on Taylor actually trying to act as a therapist to her Swifties and the broader public. She did so by assembling all of her work into a new playlist in cooperation with Apple Music before publishing the Tortured Poets Department record. However, this is not just any playlist. This is actually the playlist that got me super interested in her and into writing this article. It is one informed by the 5 stages of grief, as defined by Elizabeth Kübler-Ross and David Kessler, a common framework used in psychotherapy. This playlist maps all of her albums and songs on 5 parts: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. This is not only revolutionary because it shows her care for her listeners, but also displays her great sense of self-awareness in the present and at the times that she wrote these songs. This publication did not come without backlash either. People criticized their wedding song being on a playlist for grieving, and others argued for the titles to be sorted in a different way. But all of this is nitpicking in my humble opinion. The fact is that Taylor Swift, who never regretted writing about her exes and yet always processed her most authentic and piercing emotions through songwriting, allowed people to look deep into her own process of grieving and thus handed them the key to heal themselves. And that is beautiful. The 5 stages of grief are commonly used for any sort of detachment, from death to heartbreak. And what is more fitting than the Queen of Heartbreak to extend a hand to her listeners by providing the right music to their sorrow? And now I'm happy to report, not just the Queen of Heartbreak, but the Queen of Healthy Relationships to me. I find Taylor's move to publish this psychology-themed playlist mesmerizing, caring, and straight up deeply human. My bow goes out to all the Swifties. You really have a marvelous, imaginary best friend. That was it for this episode. I also genuinely recommend you to watch one of her speeches in 2019 where she was talking about the state of the music industry and her work and how she's also speaking up for women. I truly find that one mesmerizing, and if you haven't listened to the full speech yet, I think you truly should. So yeah, I really appreciate Taylor. Even though I'm not a Swiftie, I'm excited for the new album. I'm excited for the new era. I might not be quite as obsessed, but I definitely do see her as like a big sister figure. And to have somebody like Taylor Swift as your role model, like, I can only congratulate you, seriously. It's a good choice. Thanks for granting me access to your ears on the Mugcast. You can read more of my work on Medium at @huginamug, or follow me on Instagram via the handle hugin.amug for cozy content and updates. Don't forget to follow the podcast and share it with a fellow coffee lover, and tell me which article I should read next in the comments. I hope you had a nice cappuccino with this article, and I send a warm hug from my mug to yours. Bye bye!